Hey guys, thanks for joining us this week in the Ashby Room. Today I'll be co-hosting with Julene Deneke, who's back from episode 2, and we'll be talking to Rachana Rele. She's the VP of Design at Adobe in San Francisco. In this episode, we'll talk about how we're doing in our classes in the Executive MBA program at UC Berkeley Haas, how Rachana decided to move to Clemson, South Carolina for her master's program, how Rachana claims a seat at the table at a large tech company as a design leader, and finally her involvement with the Pride Network at Adobe and what that means to her. Without further ado, please enjoy this pleasant conversation with Rachana. Did you finish the homework yet?
Yeah, I like financial accounting. I like, it's so practical in some ways. I can analyze and be like, I can think like an investor, right? So I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit.
I watched the recording where Vincent walked through how to do it. Here's my template, everything, and then I tried it myself. The first one where you had to do the cash flow, and you get 57,000, and I got 57,000 when I tried it myself without cheating. I was like, oh my god, we're actually working.
Yeah.
But I haven't tried the rest yet. The Nordstrom one.
I did that one. JPrep. Did you guys do the JPrep?
I just started the JPrep this morning.
So the cool thing we are doing is in our small group, we are splitting up responsibilities so that half the folks do, statistic and they lead with that. And then half the folks do financial accounting. So Angus and I are on the financial accounting thing that we'll do it together and then we'll teach somebody else. So I thought that was cool, just splitting up rather than everybody burning the midnight oil,
That is what we are doing.
Oh, you guys are doing that too. That's great.
Well, in advance of our group meetings, we're all doing the assignment to some extent, as much as you can. And then we're reviewing that together, which I think for me, I am not really that good at financial accounting. So I'm attempting it. And then I'm hoping that when we come together, people will explain a little more.
Yeah.
But it's good for me to attempt it because if I wasn't assigned it, I would not probably do that.
Yeah, our group's a little less proactive. It's hey, the homework's due soon. We haven't met about anything yet since the last block. But when I go in, I try to have something done, and so we can just work off of that. But it's interesting the different personalities. I think some other teams are having issues. Our team's working pretty well, but should probably be a little more proactive. But it's hard. Everybody's got a job.
No, it's
not
great.
Everybody's got a job.
What I like is everybody, similar to you, everybody comes prepared, and not everybody has the right answers, right? But eventually you get to the right answer through the discussion, and that's the beautiful part.
Yeah, it's awesome. We're here kind of in between block to try to get you into this interview. I think we had a little scheduling mishap during block.
Yeah.
A lot of dinners, a lot of canceled dinners, but there's 70 of us, and I'm trying to get everyone in. So thank you for taking a weekend.
What a fantastic idea.
Yeah. Have you listened to the other episodes yet?
I haven't, but Julien's episode is certainly on top of my list.
Great. We have Julene here co-hosting. She's back. She couldn't
stay away.
Couldn't wait.
Had too much fun the first time.
Yeah. I think we just want to kind of get to know you. Maybe let's do your title, your company you work for, and what you do at work first.
Sure. So I work for Adobe. I am a product designer. I lead a group of product designers, which basically means designers who do UI, UX, mostly digital design, right? Who are user researchers, content writers, prototypers, and so on and so forth. So it's a cross-functional team, and everybody comes together working with engineering, working with product management, to basically deliver on the product, and not just deliver, but also have a strategic point of view on where the future of the product needs to be. I particularly work on the document cloud side of the house, which is all productivity tools, be it the signatures business, the Acrobat business, which is used by millions and millions of people, and some of our developer APIs. So that's what my team does. What keeps me excited on a day-to-day basis is just thinking about what plants, what flags that we need to plant on a half-yearly basis, yearly basis, 3 years basis. And creating provocations. The provocations that are led by design that eventually end up being the strategic direction that the product takes.
That feels like a design thinking word or a design industry word. Could you explain provocation a bit?
Sure. So provocations are nothing but explorations that are done through, that are guided by user insight, business insight, and it's a way of showcasing what the future vision might look like, right? So it's literally prototypes, nothing but, be it Figma or XD prototypes that somebody can look through the product and say, this is where we want to go a year from now, 2 years from now. And that becomes, we call it provocation because it's a point of discussion and debate internally within the teams. And those things, eventually we end up throwing them, half of them, but half of them end up becoming really great futuristic ideas for the product.
How long have you been at Adobe now?
8 years, coming up on 8 years.
And you didn't start off as a VP, but where did you start your career, and how did you end up where you were right now?
Yeah, so I'll take us all the way back to grad school. I graduated as an industrial engineer. Went on to do masters in industrial engineering as well, and then found this thing called human-computer interaction. And if I had not found that, I would have ended up becoming an operations research or a supply chain manager. And I'm looking at Julian because
I work with a lot of industrial engineers. Yeah. And we were talking about this one day at breakfast. I was like, how did you get into product design? And you mentioned industrial engineering. I was really surprised by that because I work with, really closely with those folks in supply chain.
Yeah. So industrial engineering has this minor in human-computer interaction that's really about understanding human behavior and optimizing machines, right? And computers in this case for human behavior. And so that was incredibly fascinating. I ended up choosing that as my minor and never looked back. I never once thought I'll go back into supply chain after I had found human-computer interaction. And from there, found a internship in the Bay Area to work for Oracle. And rest is history. I've always been in digital design, product design ever since.
I think to follow up on our breakfast conversation, I think that's kind of like where we got to in our discussion. But I think my next question was like, through this career that you've had, like, what is your design philosophy?
Design philosophy.
I don't know if that's too broad, but that was something that once I learned what product design is, I actually had to interview a product designer, and I was looking for questions that I should ask them, and I didn't really understand what design was, and I didn't really know that different people had different philosophies on this. So I don't know. I was just curious. If you don't have one, that's also okay.
I think everybody thinks differently. I think my background shapes how I think about design. It's both art and a science, right? This is the aesthetic and the emotion of how something makes you feel, but then the logic of something that works well, right, and feels well. So to me, design, anything and everything can be designed, be it your interactions on a day-to-day basis, be it your, back-end things that you don't see, right? The algorithms, and now that we are, talking about Gen AI, all the prompts that we are designing at the moment. So, I don't particularly have a philosophy, but I think design is about thoughtfulness and care for your audience.
Interesting. I mean, I think that's a great answer. I don't know, the combination of art and science and anything can be designed. I feel like that kind of changes my perspective on some things.
Yeah, this field of user experience is very popular today. Even 5 years ago, I think 5 years ago, I started seeing user experience, user design, or experience design as a established field in tech, especially because computer engineers can't design an experience very well, right? Mm-hmm. I think that makes a lot of sense. But before that, it came from, they drew talent from a different field, this computer or human interaction. And so that being said, it's changed quite a bit. I think that the industry has matured. Can you talk a bit about the talent entering your career field?
I've been doing this for, I want to say 20 years now. And it was, early the IBMs, the Oracles. I really started my career at PayPal after Oracle. We are seeing incredible number of designers who are very unicornish, right? I say that because back in the days, and to some certain extent in some companies, we still have this, breakdown of some, okay,
Yeah, no worries.
very specific sub functions. So, for example, I started, as a user researcher, but within a design industry, right? So my job was to go figure out how PayPal's checkout worked, or how eBay merchants were selling, and what were their biggest problems. And based on those insights, then you create something new, or fix something that exists for these merchants. I want to say back in the days, we were sort of one-trick ponies, and the talent I'm seeing right now is through the roof, faceted. You'll see people who are incredibly good at, let's say, computer science, but then also product design. And so I see this duality of, majors that are coming together, and some schools are better at doing that than others.
Do you think that's mostly like attributable to education or different programs that are being offered in university?
I think it's a nature of where I think the society at large, how kids are growing up to be this and that, as well as some of the programs that are coming out.
Yeah, I made a switch from engineering to product management halfway through my career, and at my previous company, the UX team, the design team, didn't really have a voice. And what I mean by that is organizationally, there was no VP of design. There was a VP of product. There was a VP of engineering. So the product hadn't really changed since its inception. It was a robotics company. And I moved companies, and complete fresh breath of air. The design team kind of ran the show. And they were very agile about changing the product. I'm at a startup now, and so we're doing new things all the time. We talk to customers. We think really deeply before implementing anything. Can you talk about the bureaucracy, maybe working, maybe not at Adobe, maybe just in more general, the challenges you've seen working with engineering, working with product management, and how you've had your voice heard or made your voice heard?
Yeah, and I think this has been a natural sort of evolution of design teams in organizations, right? It's also the UX maturity of an organization that allows designers to be at the table or not. And if they are at the table, is their voice heard? Like you said, are there leaders in the organization who will give the space and the time for designers to do strategic things? I think all of that depends on where we are in the industry, where that company sits in its own evolution, and the leadership in some ways. So in terms of, I'm not surprised, by your story. Yes, that has always been the case. There have been times where designers haven't had a seat at the table. And then also at Adobe, the designers actually, like I said, strategic provocations, right? We do that sort of work where it shapes the strategy of the product, and not just the, sort of veneer, if you will, of look and feel. Because that's what traditionally the word design, is associated with. Oh, you guys go do this thing called, aesthetics. But
you
not
sprinkle it on top, right?
Sprinkle it on top
yeah.
after the engineers and the product managers have thought through the logic. But where we've seen most success is when designers are at the table along with the product engineers and product managers to talk through what problems you want to solve, right? If you start at that level, the divergence of ideas is immense, right? And then you can narrow down to what UI you want to build after that. But starting off narrow seems like a lost opportunity for most companies.
I think that's why I was so surprised when you said that your background is industrial engineering, because I view that as that is like process driven, very, very structured. And I, have seen the benefits of it. And I think maybe, I don't work in the design space at all. So maybe my conception of it is kind of the look and feel, but yeah, I think the way that you're describing it like makes so much sense, and it makes so much sense that it could have such a huge impact on companies when it's integrated like from the beginning rather than kind of tossed in at the end.
So my process, industrial engineering, even though I did not, end up choosing that as my professional path, I think it has shaped how I think, right, and the process of where the quality problems occur, right? Like you stop the production engine if the quality problems occur. JIT, Kanban, like those are some of the concepts, honestly, that I think about day in, day out. And that has shaped how I think about the outcome that we need to produce and the process that leads to that outcome.
Well, I love like timelines. And when you were like, all right, here's our quarterly goal, here's our biannual goal, this is like what we're going to work to. Like, I think that's kind of similar to how I try to like run my team as well. So it seems like, yeah, those things definitely transfer across industries.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think you took from industrial engineering, or did you kind of like learn that as you were like evolving in your job?
Yeah, I think I took some of that from industrial engineering, but the notion of measuring your outcomes in a commonly used term called OKR is something that we do day in, day out, right? Your quarterly goals, your yearly goals are set on OKRs, and again, designers play a role in setting those OKRs, understanding those OKRs, and sort of projecting those OKRs, right? Because without having good design and seeing the opportunity of where we are and where we want to be, how do you sort of start projecting those OKRs and predicting where we are going to be, in the next quarter or the 6 months from now? So I think it's a mix of the background, but then also lived experiences through tech.
Yeah, it feels like there's the design part, the discipline, and then there's the how to thrive in a large organization. And that part's a little more, how do you communicate your successes and change or build momentum in the organization?
Yeah.
If I could change subjects a little bit, I don't believe you were born in the U.S.
Can you tell from my French accent?
Yeah. I was going to guess France. And I think there are probably a number of people that would be interested to hear sort of where you started, early life, and then maybe the set of skills or competency. Like, what do you think you did well to get to where you are in your career from your early life? And however you want to tell that.
Okay. I was born in Mumbai, India, and wanted to be an architect, but grew up in a very typical Indian household where you were told what kind of degree you can get. So ended up pursuing engineering and not architecture. But, life has a way of circling back. So I ended up being in design any which way. But, early childhood, I think it was all about curiosity and hard work. Those were the two things that were values, if you will, that were drilled into us as kids, and coming to the U.S., when you're immigrating, it's never an easy experience, especially I didn't have anybody. I didn't know anybody in the U.S. When I first came, and I went to Clemson, South Carolina as my first stop out of Mumbai, India. So that was interesting, fun, nevertheless. Yeah.
Well, you said the two values that were instilled in you were hard work, but also creativity. Curiosity. Who do you think your parents were the ones who did that?
Yeah, and I was my older sister. She's incredibly smart, and I have a younger brother. The fun part was my older sister and I ended up going to the same school and ended up having the same teachers, and they would look at me and say, "You're her sister? What happened?" So, but then my brother came along and he made both of us look really, really good. That was fantastic. But yeah, it was, mainly through my parents, honestly. They didn't have the opportunities that they were trying to give us at that point.
Yeah, I don't think my parents were like explore curiosity. They were like be
Pragmatic.
successful,
Yeah.
get a
Yeah.
job. Like
Was South Carolina, your parents moved here, or you came here for school? What was
I
that?
came here for school. So it was
How'd you decide to move to the U.S. for school?
it was just, I knew I wanted to do some a master's degree. Didn't know in what or where. In what was kind of carved out for me because my undergrad was also industrial engineering, so that seemed like the most linear step forward. Where it was a very hacky decision. It was basically based on where my friends were.
Okay.
That
Community.
works. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're there? Sure, I'll go.
So after you joined the workforce as a designer, I think you said you went to design right away after that, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty of paths you can take. Some people really like to specialize, be really creative.
Yeah.
Some people go into management, and you took the latter. How did you make that decision, or how come you did so well in the management track?
Did so well. That's all relative. But I think, one thing that's consistent across my journey is that I've always taken lateral moves. From being a researcher, I said, this is all great, but I want to do that, right? So that was a lateral move. Similarly, from that was design for me. And from design, it wasn't never about I want to move up. It was really about I want to learn that, and that in some ways that has actually helped me move up, which is a strange thing.
I think though, I feel like you're being very humble, but I know, so we actually were in the first group together at our orientation, Carl the Fog. Carl. But I remember you mentioning there, you're like, I'm a leader at Adobe, and you certainly are. And I think, you take that as like a true responsibility. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Your rise of the ranks. Like, how did
Rise
you
of
move
the
up?
ranks. So I joined Adobe as a director of design at first, and when I first got the call of, hey, come, we are going to offer you this job, my first reaction, I called the hiring manager. I remember just like very succinctly being in my backyard, talking on the phone to Josh, and I said, Josh, are you sure? Why me? Like, I was just like, I don't belong here. And, first of all, as a designer, you put Adobe on this pedestal, right? This one of those dream companies that you want to work for. You've thought about it all your life. And here it is. So that was really, really exciting. And as soon as I joined, I think, again, I have not thought about career laddering, but I've thought about what do I need to learn next. And so from there, I just had, really great mentors at Adobe, great opportunities, and really showing impact. I think at the end of the day, we forget how important it is to show the impact of your work. And so I've been very fortunate, by the way, being able to work on large-scale projects where I can, where the impact becomes very obvious.
I see.
Yeah, I think you're still being humble too. I feel like there were probably a lot of challenges you had to overcome, but that's okay. I think we'll get some of that.
I think the challenges are no different than challenges at for a design leader at any other company, I think, and those are challenges of being at the table, right? And then once you're at the table, is your voice being heard as a leader? Are you being seen as a leader? Do you have a point of view as a leader, first of all, to be heard, right? And so knowing that, how do you show up from a day-to-day basis, right? Are you showing up to the table prepared to speak up on a product, for example, right? Or have a point of view on what the experience should be on, let's say, Acrobat, right? What does Acrobat need to be in 5 years from now? I had to do that prep work, right, and show up with a point of view to be taken seriously.
What is Acrobat going to be 5 years from now?
You'll see soon.
Oh, is there a big announcement coming up? Okay, maybe the next topic is really about the MBA. We were, I don't know, for the 20 minutes before this, we were talking about homework, talking about the quizzes and exams and how much work it is. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of sacrifice. How did you decide to put yourself through it, however naively at the time? And what do you hope to get out of your program?
Funny enough, I've thought about MBA for the last 15 years and had never, life happens, and had never had a chance to actually pull the plug on making a commitment. And this time around, it was really about, again, lateral growth so that I'm able to solve problems really well, right? To me, it's that is the goal of this MBA. I love what I do, which is product design. And does it make me a better product designer is the question. And a better leader and a business leader. So that's why MBA. Again, I hope that I become I bring more value, right? That I leave the products at a better state than I receive them, or create new value, not just the products that I have, but products that don't exist yet.
Yeah, maybe you can't talk about anything proprietary or in the future, but is there anything exciting at Adobe you want to talk about? Product-wise?
I probably shouldn't.
We can
I
always
know I
just
shouldn't.
cut it after.
No, I can't.
Maybe last question, because we're about half hour.
I have
Oh, go ahead.
one more sort. Well, I don't know. I mean, and just if you wanted to touch on this at all, I know you're also an ERG leader at Adobe. I don't know if that's important or something you kind of wanted to touch on a little bit.
Yeah, I lead the Pride network at Adobe. It's a ERG group. And it's one of my ways of, giving, in some sense, giving back to the community that I've received so much from. And it's a lot of fun. And I'm surrounded by these amazing, amazing group of leaders who actually lead the group on a day-to-day basis.
I got involved with Women in Tesla and also in ERG, and I've also personally found that really fulfilling. I've met people across Tesla that I never would have met otherwise because they're in, not just supply chain, but design and, et cetera. And I think I remember you mentioning too, also in our orientation, they must have asked us some good, thoughtful questions. But you were talking about, D&I, diversity and inclusion as well, and how, as a leader, you were, helping to make space for other people and make space at the table. And I thought that was very cool, and also something that I wanted to take away. But yeah, I mean, I guess in that regard as well, is that something you were just I want to do this because other people made space for me, or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, and I think there's a dearth of examples, right? Role models. As growing up, I had role models in my parents who showed us how to work hard. But growing up with their role models of successful gay people, that was not a thing, So for me, it's really stepping up and, half the trouble of other people coming out or people feeling like they don't belong is they don't see other people like themselves. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's important. And I am involved in Women at Adobe, and to me, that's such a fulfilling responsibility and purpose. I get a lot out of it than I give, honestly. It's this group of women who meet at least on a quarterly basis, and it's having a sounding board, right? People that you couldn't share things with, you end up sharing with these group of women who have immensely helped me in my career. And so I try to give it back through mentoring or coaching or what have you. So, people know that my door is always open on that front.
We actually had a dinner with all of the women in our EMBA class, and I think the men were very jealous of our dinner. But I think it's exactly what you said, and I've thought a little bit about it. I'm like, it's a little hard to like put my finger on it, but I feel like when you're in a group of women and you can kind of just like relax a little bit. There's like a lot of shared experiences that just come out and you don't really have to kind of like force them. And it feels like very supported. I mean, in the ERG and also here at Haas. So yeah, I feel fortunate for that.
Me too.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out.
I'm
I'm glad we did this with 3 people.
Well,
We need allies.
I told Edward that I'm gonna start a Slack channel called Men of Haas, just because he's special. Just
Next guest, who would you die to see on the podcast?
man, so many. Gosh, I want to hear it from all of them. Let me vote for Shelby. Has she done this yet?
Scheduled for next week or
Okay,
next
okay.
month.
Next
Yeah.
session.
I'm excited. She's got some cool things that she's doing in AI at Levi's, and I'm sure she won't tell us about that here, but I'm excited about learning about her.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Any final comments, Celeste?
Statistics are noisy.